everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today another exciting video for you as we take another closer look at the upcoming BAE 146 Professional for X-Plane 11. This is being made by JustFlight and they're doing it in partnership with Thranda Design, and it is a pretty exciting and interesting aeroplane. I'm really looking forward to having this in the simulator. They've been kind enough to send over a preview copy, so this is a preview build. It is not the final product. It is still a work in progress as it goes through its final brushing up, but hopefully it will be available to you guys if you so wish in the very near future. Today we are going to carry on from where we left off. So in the last video I showed a cold and dark setup until we taxied out and we took off. So for this video, we're just going to do another takeoff just to show you a few more features that have been added or that I finally realized are there. And then we're going to get it into the air. I'll show you a little bit of the navigating side of things in here, and we'll see what some of the features and what you can expect to get with this product if you choose to get it for your simulator. We are going to be taking off from East Midlands, flying up towards Edinburgh, but as I said, we're going to get into the flight and then talk about what you're going to get with this package. So here we are on the flight deck about to take off from runway 09 at East Midlands. For those of you who didn't see the previous video, I highly recommend watching it just to give you an idea of what we've set up in this aeroplane. It is quite a different sort of aeroplane. But here we are, we've got the flight directors on. We're going to climb up to an altitude which I'm going to set in a second for you. We're going to track straight ahead to this NDB. So again, I have a video on tracking if you need help with that on my channel. We're going to straight ahead to this NDB, which is shown with this needle here, the ADF. I've got it set to ADF. We'll fly to the NDB, then we'll make a left turn round onto heading 270 and intercept this 308 up towards this VOR, the 115.7 Trent VOR. After that, we'll head up to Pole Hill and continue our flight north over to Edinburgh. So a few things we've set up, just to recap. We've got the thrust management system set up. Again, I talked about this in the previous video, but very well modeled and really interesting system to have in an airplane. Basically, there's no auto thrust on this aeroplane, so when we set the thrust, we're going to push these thrust levers forwards a bit like this, and then you'll see I've stopped moving them now. You can hear that config warning just because it's trying to take off, and now you can see it balancing those engines as it tries to set the 93.7 takeoff thrust. If I move the thrust levers back too much, the clutch inside or the motors it has can't engage properly. Move it back enough, there we go, and there's a blue arrow to tell me to move the thrust levers forward so that it can take over and set that takeoff thrust. Very handy system, but not a full auto thrust. So anyway, that is set up. It is automatic. You put in the right temperature and the temperature outside. I've got my V speeds. We're going to rotate at 107 knots and climb away at 120 knots, which are set on here simply by clicking on this little cards. Problem is, if you click it twice, I've had this happen, and it goes to no. That is about right. Yeah, 107, 120. Okay, good. Right, so, yeah, loads to learn for me on this airplane. Let's talk about some other things we've set up. Now, you can set these bugs to that N1 we need, which will be ordered to 93.7. That is a function you can do just as a visual cue. I've got the autopilot ready to go. So, down here, I've engaged yaw damper 1, yaw damper 2. They are ready. If they're off, it actually appears over here on this little autopilot, sort of like our flight mode enunciators in the Airbus. There's a little yaw damper amber. So yaw dampers go on there. We've got our squawk on, and here's our ADF tuned to 353. Right, so I've armed the altitude. I'm going to wind on the altitude. So here's the first feature I want to talk about that I didn't show last time. You, instead of being able to just scroll, which as you can see has its own problems. When I scroll, it sometimes winds itself in. If you get that little arrow, the scroll wheel works just fine, and there we go. But I'm going to set 25,000 feet. But what you can do in this airplane, which I haven't seen before, is you can drag this wheel around just like you would in the real airplane, which is a far quicker way of doing it and surprisingly accurate. I've been quite impressed with this. So there we go. We want 25,000 feet, and there we go. And you can fine tune a little bit like that if you want. There you go. So a little handle just to change that is quite novel. I haven't seen that before in any aeroplane either, actually. I've selected out arm, so that is ready to go. So that you can see there's a little white out down here. So that is what we're going to climb up to. So we'll take off, and we need to make sure we set standard when we do get up and in the air. Once we're in the air, we'll do a bit of navigating, and then we'll talk about some other features. Before we go as well, I want to show you this, which I didn't see last time. If you click down here, you get the AVI tab. Brilliant. We all love having an AVI tab available. So this is the electronic flight bag, basically. But you can see here it shows us a few other things. Ground speed, the GPS altitude, which is relevant in certain cases, definitely. And above ground level. So that's effectively your height and your current track. So that's all very good. And here's our usual Avi tab. Now this, I'm not sure if this is the sun. Let me try and just adjust the time of day. Yeah, that's the sun reflecting through, so there you go. But if we have a look in here, I can click this and it swaps between Avi tab and sort of the EFB. And then here I can adjust the fuel. So there you go. I can add on 100 kilos. You can change the units down here. We can add some passengers. But remember, if you're going to change around your weights, you need to make sure your thrust management is set up properly. And your speeds will potentially change slightly. 109, 112. There we go. That is all there. You can change your fuel. We could also open the doors if we would like to, but we're obviously sitting here with the engines running, so we won't do that. We can also make announcements, but I haven't been able to hear these yet. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, but like I said, this is a preview build, so probably just some of this functionality is just to show you what things you can expect available through here. Then we can pop it straight back to the Avi tab, go back to our charts or whatever we want to do with that, as we're all very used to, which is, yeah, really nice. Obviously, I'm not a fan. If you sit like that, it just sits there annoying me, so I do actually like to just turn that off. This airplane comes with the default X-Plane FMC, but they're going to make a custom one. It's on the way. It'll be free of charge to those of you who've purchased this this airplane. Right, there we go. So there's just a couple of things I hadn't shown in the last video before we got in the air. So what we're going to do now is show you some couple of things on the outside model. In my last video, we talked about how this has a very unique flight control system. I say unique. It's a legitimate, obviously normal flight control system, but it's rare. We don't see it very often. Most jet airliners these days use hydraulics to power the flight controls. So when the pilot moves the flight control, the aileron will just move wherever they direct it. For example, the Airbus. However, in this aeroplane, it uses trim tabs. So what I'm doing here is if I'm going to right now move my control wheel to the right, I want to bank right, so I move it to the right, and you can see the roll spoiler deploys. That is a hydraulic control surface, so that just deploys like normal. But if you look on the aileron doesn't move. And what does happen is this little trim tab here moves down. So I'm banking to the right, so I expect this aileron to move up. To make it move up, the pilot is only controlling this little tab here. And what you effectively do is by moving this tab down, you lift up this aileron, which rolls the whole aeroplane. Now, it's a bit of a confusing system. It's quite, like I say, unusual. So the best way for me to show you this is I'm now going to go into the conditions and let's change the ground weather, and we'll just go for something ridiculous. So we'll change that wind speed to, let's do 50 knots, 60 knots. There we go. And now the airplane has effectively got a bit of airflow over it. Now this is where X-Plane is just great. It has a really good flight model. So now I'm going to move exactly the same movement. And as you can see, that aileron actually moves up, which ultimately drops that wing down a bit. Now it's a bit gusty, so you can see it moving around. But there you go. So now if I move to the left, the opposite way, you can see that all I'm doing is steering this trim tab up, and that forces this aileron down, which ultimately rolls the whole aircraft over to the side. So that is how we are flying. It's a very clever system. Likewise on the elevator, the same system, so I've still got that really high wind speed on. If I move my elevator up, so I'm trying to pitch the airplane up, all I do is control that trim tab. It goes down, which forces the elevator into the up position, which is now giving us, a nose up attitude. Likewise, if I want the nose to go down, the trim tab actually goes the opposite way, but it forces the flight control. So it's confusing to get your head around, but yeah, quite a neat system. Very cool to see it modeled in this way, especially to see it working like this with just the airflow over it. The faster the airflow, the more they'll respond, of course, and when you've got no airflow, those flight controls won't move, and that is simulated here pretty accurately. So it's time to take off again. As I said, we're going to fly straight ahead to this NDB, which is in front of us. It'll take us not very long before making a left turn to the west and intercepting that radial up towards the VOR. We're going to climb straight away up to our cruise of 25,000 feet so that I can show you some of the other features and included parts of this simulation. Okay, so the parking brake is released, all of our lights are on, so what we're going to do is spool up those engines a bit. Let's spooling up, going to release those brakes, and now we're going to move those thrust levers forward. Remember, just put them roughly forward, and then there's the thrust management system taking over. Get some nice sound effects. I'll try and get, or we'll talk about sound effects later in the video. We're going to rotate at 109 knots. And then we're going to climb away, get through 1,000 feet, accelerate and retract the flaps just like normal. So once our speed down here gets through the white bug, bit of a crosswind, there it is, and rotate the aircraft. It does seem pretty sprightly as it gets in the air. There's 15 degrees of pitch, positive climb, gear up, and of course this is a real airliner. Got to trim it. So I'll do a bit of trimming and we'll climb away, and that's it. We are up in the air. It's a very simple airplane once it's in the air. It feels and behaves really nicely. It does feel like it has a bit of weight to it. It's not an aerobatic aeroplane, as you would expect. So we're keeping that 15 degrees of pitch. We're above 1,000 feet above the ground now. We do actually have a radio altimeter to help us as well. There you go, 1,450 feet above the ground. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to lower that nose. Go for 10 degrees of pitch. You can hear those sounds starting to get louder now as we accelerate and get some wind noise. And the NDB is in front of us still. So what I'm going to do is I've got my heading bug set in front. I'm going to press heading on the flight directors. I'm going to engage the autopilot by pressing that. And what I'm going to do is engage vertical speed and arm the altitude. So I want it to level off that altitude. Now, here's the question. How do we accelerate now? Because it's climbing in vertical speed and there's nowhere to change the vertical speed. Well, we have to use control wheel steering in this airplane. So when I press down my control wheel steering button, which you have to assign, what I'm doing is I'm effectively overriding the autopilot. So I'm going to press that, put the vertical speed where I want it, and then allow the airplane to fly that. So I press the control wheel steering button. I'm lowering the nose now. Let's put it, let's say 5 degrees of pitch for now. And then I'm releasing the control wheel steering button. And now you can see the autopilot, which disappeared, has now come back online. And it will now target the vertical speed I left it with. So let's bring in those flaps now as we accelerate. We are most certainly going fast enough to get rid of the flaps. And that NDB is starting to disappear off to the right. So I'm not going to fight it too much. We are getting very close to it. And if you listen carefully, you could have hear the howl. Now what you will see is that the speed's going to increase now because it's flying that vertical speed. So what I'm going to actually do is now press IS and let it climb at 200 knots. So now you'll notice it starts to pitch up. There's the NDB needle moving. So let's bring our heading bug all the way around to 270. If you guys want more videos on this airplane or flying an airplane like this, do please let me know. It's a really interesting machine, and it's quite a challenge at first to get your head around it, but it's very capable. It's done in a slightly different way to what we're used to. So there's the heading bug coming round, so we're going to intercept this radial from the other side. We're climbing at 200 knots. We need to set standard, so I'm going to set standard 1013 on here. There are 3 altimeters. I have not found a way to synchronize them yet, and some of them, like this standby one, take ages and ages to scroll. Maybe if I do that, that's a bit easier. Oh no, too much. Yeah, that's it. Made it worse for myself. Okay, 1013 and 1013 over on this side. Oh. Okay, excellent. So we're now climbing away. The gear is up, the flaps are up. We've got air conditioning and pressurization from the engines. We can leave this pump in auto and the PTU can come off, I believe. Again, lots to learn about this airplane. Master warning, not sure why. Anyway, now we're turning around and we're pointing on that radial. What I want to do next is arm this radio. I want it to actually intercept it. So we're climbing in IS, and also that's what I need to do. We need to adjust the thrust. So I'm now, instead of takeoff thrust, which I can no longer use, I'm going to go to synchronize, and then it will target 92.5. And what I can do is now they are synchronized to, and you can actually choose which engine it's synchronized to. Master is currently engine number 1. So if I move the number 1 thrust lever, there you go, you can see, and they should all synchronize so that you don't get that howling noise, or sorry, a whining noise when the engines aren't quite in sync. It sort of vibrates a little bit. Great. Now we are intercepting this radio. How do I make it do that? VOR/lock V/L. If I press that, this is how you'd get it to fly a localizer, and now I'm going to use it to fly this radial. We're now pointing up towards the VOR. You can see my DME is up here. Very important, this DME only displays if I select it on here. If I turn that off, you don't get anything. So yeah. It's got to be, I wonder if I just put it to on. Yeah, on works as well. It's got to actually be engaged up there before you'll see it. So we are 17 miles out from this VOR. After the VOR, we're going to go to 112.1, the next VOR. There's 10,000 feet. Let's turn off the landing lights, and I think it's time to accelerate. 200 knots is a little bit slow, I think. So how am I going to do that? The same way. Let's use control wheel steering. So I press my control wheel steering button. You see sync and the autopilot light up here turns off. Now I'll lower the nose, let the airplane accelerate. Try not to let that vertical speed get too slow. Might need to give it a bit more thrust to do this. Right, there we go. Okay, so now control wheel steering. Pushed again. Now we're going. Now we're accelerating. Let's keep it climbing at 250 knots for now. I know we can go faster, but this isn't the fastest airplane in the world. There's no doubt about it. So if I can get it to 250, I'm hoping, there we go. I'll release the control wheel steering, let the autopilot re-engage, and now it should target 250 knots for the rest of the climb until we tell it otherwise. All the while looking to make sure we have altitude armed at 25,000 feet. And that's it. So you can see there, it's totally possible to fly departures, to track towards NDBs and VORs, and use the normal vertical modes. It's just they're not quite as available as we may have been used to in some other airliners. Quite a good climb rate at 250 knots. I've been quite impressed with this, with the performance of this aeroplane. So let's talk about the performance and the handling of this aeroplane then. This aeroplane has been developed with real-life BAE 146 pilots. That's not me. I have never flown a BAE 146, sadly. But yeah, it has been... Oh, there's my scenery difference. You can see there I have Orbex. This aeroplane has been developed with them to try and make sure that it feels and handles like the real aircraft would be expected to, which is fantastic. And as I said, it definitely has a feel to it. It has a bit of lag, a bit of weight, and this is a stocky aeroplane. It's not a aerobatic aeroplane by any means. So you do feel that when you fly it, which is really nice. I've got lots more flying to do with it though to really get a sense of how it handles, and I haven't done too much of the landings or anything like that just yet. The other thing they've done, which is quite nice, or always nice to see in an add-on for a serious simulator like this, is the performance manuals have been referenced in order to get accurate climb performance out of the aeroplane. So you won't be able to just climb up at whatever speed you feel like and get up all the way to 35,000 feet straight away. It's got realistic timings, and depending on the weight and so on, it's been hopefully matched. So JustFlight say at least to roughly match the real aeroplane. So that's nice to know that they've done the background research to hopefully get this working like the real thing, or at least behaving like it should do. Something else about this add-on that's been quite impressive to me is the sound effects. So they do comment in their information about this product, JustFlight say how it's been recorded off a real aeroplane, and I can believe it. It's got a lot of little sound effects for every little switch I pulled and click and press. They all sound slightly different, but what I really like is just the engine sounds. We all like a good add-on where the engine sounds really, really raw, and in fact it sounds surprisingly meaty for the airplane it actually is. It really sounds like it's got a lot of thrust, and I can't imagine these engines do, seeing as you have to have 4 of them to lift this into the air. So these 4 jet engines are obviously relatively low power, but they make a really nice sound, so it's been quite pleasant to enjoy those. So that's been something really nice. And we'll also have a look at the famous howling flap sounds that this airplane makes. Apparently an aerodynamic noise, but I'm not entirely sure. This plane, if you were ever a passenger on it, you will recognise the sound of the flaps as they travel. They were very loud, very interesting design. I'm not sure what caused it, but yeah, there you go. So we'll carry on in the cruise. We'll just keep going straight ahead for now while we look at a few of the other systems in the flight deck, and also included with this airplane, just to show you what it's like to actually try and fly this. So I was asked about the TCAS. Does this airplane have TCAS? As you can see, I've got it fitted with the instant vertical speed indicator, the IVSI. This is the original sort of old school instrument, and here it is. But if I click on this little box, I can swap that over to a TCAS unit. So yes, you can have TCAS on here. Don't forget, of course, you need to set up your transponder properly, and we saw how last time you could set in your flight ID as well. But there we go. In fact, that should be on TARA if I'm going to use the TCAS. There we go. And there it is displayed up there. So that is possible, and you can just click that back. Nice that you can do that on the fly. Literally. We've also got these other little 2D panels which are quite useful. So that's our thrust management system. It's just a duplication of the panel over there. You can bring up the autopilot, you can click them again and they disappear. It does also have a weather radar. Now the weather radar is going to be a whole project on its own for me to work out. It's as you can see, it does function. There's -8 degrees in there. I'm not entirely sure what it's using to get its weather information, so I'm not even going to pretend that I know how to use this one in particular. It looks quite complex. There we go. If I put it to WX and we have weather, I've changed it around a little bit. You can even hear it outside, and yeah, it is painting it. So that suggests there's some weather off to our right, and we're moving through it. Those noises. You don't ever hear thunder in the airplane, I can promise you that. Well, I've never heard it. Maybe in a smaller aircraft, but in a pressurized jet airliner, no. That would be absolutely terrifying. But there you go. So a functioning weather radar does come with this airplane down here. The FMC we talked about. This is default X-plane, and to be honest with you, yeah, if they're going to include a custom one later on, which is pretty good, and it's going to be free of charge, of course, if you purchase this airplane yourself before they've released it, obviously. But I quite like flying it using these navs. This is how this airplane was designed, as I mentioned in my last video. You've got this VOR panel up here and so on. It's all sort of, the prominence is on radio navigation, and the FMC is obviously a bit of an afterthought by comparison. But yeah, so it will be coming in the future. Now let's talk about something I haven't seen before in one of these, which is the on-the-fly, again, livery changer. So we're obviously in the British Aerospace 146 livery. This add-on comes with quite a lot of liveries, 34 different liveries, and then also another sort of blank one. So it is well equipped for liveries. There are a lot of variants included as well, which we'll talk about in a second. But what I do like is if you click on this little arrow, there's this heart-stopping moment where your simulator freezes. So I don't think I'd do this live on a stream. But there we go, and look at that, it swaps over. Give it a second to load, and there's us in our Dan Air livery. How great is that? So these liveries are applicable to this version of the 146, which is the 146-100, which is what I'm flying right now, which is obviously the first version. Here's a Formula 1 livery. I know we have a lot of Formula 1 fans watching the channel, so there you go. So that is something I've not seen before. Really quite nice, but again, slightly heart-stopping because of the way the sim does freeze. But I've never seen it totally give up so far, touch wood. And there's a Jersey European. Of course, we had to have a Jersey European livery, which I hope to use soon. So this is the 146-100, as I said, but we can also swap it out for some other variants, which I'll show you now. Several variants are included with this package. So you'll get the BAE 146-100, 200 and 300 series, as well as 2 different cargo variants and 2 different RAF variants. So this is the 146-200 in the Titan Airways livery. So as I said, plenty of different liveries are included. What the actual differences are inside, I'm not 100% sure. That's more research for me to go and do for future videos and streams. Like I say, this airplane entirely new to me as we picked it up. So here we have one of the cargo variants. This is a rather nice Ansett Australia livery, but yeah, this is included as well. This is the 146-200 cargo variant of the 146. So you get your blanked out windows as you'd expect for a cargo version. And here we have a Royal Air Force variant. This one has the countermeasure pods, pretty cool. So they've been modelled. I'm not sure if there's a way to make them do anything. I don't think so, but they are modelled on the exterior. So you've got these ones at the front, and then you have these couple at the back as well. Nice to see these things included, and yeah, just shows you that they've got quite a few of the variants covered. I quite like this livery actually. This is really quite smart. Quite like the uniform sort of grey colour. So yeah, really nice to see all of those, and there are a couple more. And just to prove it is included, here is the 146-300. This is a stretched variant, trying to get a few more passengers on, of course. So we'll definitely have to use this. I love this livery as well. This livery included again with the package. So yeah, really nice to see. Again, we've so far all my flying's been in the 100, but I think the cockpits, I haven't noticed any dramatic changes to them. but I imagine if we go into the cabin we might spot that it's a little bit longer. Oh, this has got the Speedbird tick in it. So yeah, so these ones are stretched variants. And here we have one of the rather fancy Royal Flight BAE 146s. There's two of these, and yeah, I really like this one with the red wings. Really nice. And it's got the countermeasure pods as well, as you can imagine it probably would need. So it's got those, and it's got them up at the front as well, just much like the military versions. This is after all basically an RAF aeroplane, as you can see. And yeah, there we have the Royal Crest. So yeah, pretty cool. Nice to see these, some very different and quite interesting pieces of aviation history really shown here. JustFlight do say that there'll be variations in the engines. This is configurable. There's a file you can use to configure it, but I haven't noticed it too much. These are all very well synchronized, but you can start to get an idea. Here's the vibration meter, and it shows us there's slightly different vibrations on the engines. They're all ever so slightly different. For some reason the inboard two are vibrating a bit more than the outboard two. No idea why. You see the temperatures are identical. I mean, that's probably I'd like a bit more randomness. Maybe I haven't got it turned on properly, but yeah, but there you go. Let's take a look at the lighting, and there's some cool features here. So what I'm going to do obviously is set this to nighttime, which is often where my streams end up going. Okay, here we are now at night, and as you can see, pretty normal backlighting. We've got the spotlight up here, but here's something I haven't seen before. If we turn on the light overhead, so there's a light up here for the pilot, and you can actually click on it and drag it around. So let's turn, that's called the lap light, I think. There we go, it lights up down here. And now if I drag that around, look at that. I have not seen that before. I can use it to light up over here, put it, point at the forward bit there. Really quite something interesting. I didn't know that was even possible, to be honest with you. Look at that. So you can drag your little lights around, so that gives you a bit more of an ambience in the flight deck. And obviously there's all sorts of other lights and backlighting modeled all over the place. It takes me a while to oh, you can even adjust the airflow. Look at that. So here's a view. I've turned on all the lights. You wouldn't have all of these on at this point, but yeah, we've got the logo lights, the high intensity nav lights, we've got the landing lights. And we've got these lights here, which are the wing inspection lights, shining back onto the wings, so we can look back and check for ice, I suppose. But yeah, so all the nice lighting, as you'd expect, really. I do think X-Plane itself looks just fantastic at this time of day. It really excels in the dusk and the nighttime lighting. I love the road effects and so on. Really nice. Something I've recently discovered as well, of course, where's the cup holders? Well, don't worry, that is modelled. There you go. So you don't have to stress about not being able to reach your drink, because there's no custom coffee cup in the window here, but you can tuck that one away. Just make sure you finish the coffee before you try and fold it away again. So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been of interest to you. This is, like I say, a really interesting airliner. Great to have it put into X-Plane in such great detail. The expected release date is sometime, I believe, as we move through next week, but there's not a confirmed date yet. Price is going to be £54.99, which will also be €69.95 or $74.99. So those are the pricings for it as it comes out, and like I say, hopefully next week, but there's no guarantees for that one. This is going to feature a bit more on the channel as we try out some streams with it, and I've got a few more videos, obviously, including the descent and landing to go. So do leave your thoughts in the comments and let me know anything else you'd like to see about this add-on. Otherwise, there'll be plenty more Airbus guides and tutorials coming to the channel soon, as well as streams and plenty of airliners, so do please subscribe if you enjoy this sort of content. Otherwise, we'll see you again in another video very soon. Please do keep safe and well. Bye bye.